So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to compile a blueprint. Compiling a blueprint is in its basics form very simple. It's about just pressing a button and seeing if the blueprint compiles. But once your kind of project grows, it becomes important to be able to keep track of the stuff that making sure that all of the blueprints are working. So this is also a little bit of an intro on how to set up automation. You can use the automation panel in Unreal, which we'll take a look at. And then I'm going to end up by showing you how to do it through the command line. And then as a little bit of a bonus, I'm going to hook it up using Bazel or Bazel build from Google, which adds some really cool features to it and kind of opens this up to a whole new world of possibilities. So I'm starting off by just making a test project here, which is going to be called compile blueprint project, and I'm going to make an empty project here just for the sake of this demo. Let's move this out of the way. So now I'm starting Unreal on my other monitor, and I will momentarily move it over here. See, okay. We get it over here. Okay, cool. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new blueprint. I'm going to make an actor, and I'm going to call it BP my blueprint actor here. So being a little bit cheeky, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to open up this. See, let's dock this here, open this up, and I'm going to press this button here, and everything compiles completely. So this is awesome. We've accomplished our first task, which was compiling a blueprint. But what I want to do is I'm going to add a struct here, because I'm going to make this blueprint not compile. My struct, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to make a reference to this struct here. Call my struct like so, and then I'm going to drag out of my struct, and I'm going to do break, and it has a member variable that was automatic, so I'm going to print the value here of this one here. So I press compile again, and lo and behold, everything kind of compiles, which is kind of cool. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this struct here, and it's going to tell me, don't delete this struct. You're going to run into problems. And this is fine when you're doing this in a blueprint, because it can check to see if is this struct being used anywhere. But if this is being changed in C++ or in code, you're not going to get this error. So you may have a scenario where the struct has changed or some variable has changed, so your blueprints become invalid. So I'm going to force delete it, and I'm going to save my blueprint here. And then I go in here and I start compiling, and you can see that I'm getting all sorts of errors here. This is kind of the test case that I wanted to set up in the beginning. So this kind of accomplishes being able to compile a blueprint in the actual editor. In the editor. So next step is I wanted to go in and show you how you can actually go in and compile this blueprint through through the actual code. And the way that you do that, normally you would go in and you would take a look at the it's under tools. I usually go through the session front end here. It's called the automation panel. It's called automation here. And here you have all sorts of kind of automation tests that you can run. So if we take a look we look for my blueprint here, we don't find anything. I'll test, we don't find anything here. So Unreal has this really cool way of being able to run all sorts of kind of project tests or asset validation tests, and to be able to enable the test that compiles our blueprint, we go in here, we go and we search for, it's going to be under automation, I think, or under testing maybe. Let's see. It's either automation or testing. Let's go to the testing here. So we want to turn on editor tests here. So the editor, there's a bunch of tests that you can enable, but the ones that we're looking at right now are the editor tests. So if I restart my project now, and it's starting up on the other monitor, initializing, loading all sorts of cool things. Here we go. Now we have the this. Go to testing here. We can see that the editor tests are enabled. Let's go back into our into the session front end, and we go into automation. And now when we search for my blueprint here and we go under all tests, you can see that there are these project tests now that are available. And I wonder if I can, yeah, okay. So I normally just go to all tests here. So the project tests, if I just erase everything, if I go under, look under here, project tests, there's 289 tests here. There's a test for the map, and then there's tests for all sorts of all sorts of blueprints. And compiled blueprints here has 72 tests, and this is all sorts of built-in stuff that comes with the engine, SkySphere. But here you can see that we have my blueprint actor available, and this is the one that we created. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to do start the test, and we can see that our blueprint here is not in a good spot. Let's scale this up. Let's see. Let's just run this again. I pressed the wrong, yeah, here we go. So here we can see that it's complaining about this doesn't, there's all sorts of kind of struct related problems. So if I go in here and I make another one, I'm just going to make another blueprint here. And this is my good blueprint. And I'm not going to make any changes to that. I'm going to go back into the session front end here. Under automation, let's search for, or we can find project here. Take a look at the blueprints. I want to do compile blueprints, and I have two of them here. I can select both of them, start the tests, and now you should see that the first one, my blueprint actor, is still causing errors, but the second one has a success. So, so this is the way that we can do it by using the built-in automation tool. So the next step is going to be doing this via the command line. Let's just close the editor now, and we switch over to Visual Studio Code. I'm just gonna make a script that does this. Normally you could do this however you want. I think the clearest way for me to show this is through Python. So I'm gonna do compile blueprints.py. And I'm just doing this. There isn't really anything Python related to this. I'm just doing it because this is the language that I know the best. So first off, our goal is to compile the blueprints in the project using the command line. So I need to first get a little bit of information. I need to get the path to the engine. So I save that. I have an absolute path here just for clarity. I need the project path. So this is the absolute path to my project. And then I just need to start assembling my command. So we'll just make an array. We're going to do, the array is going to be called command. It's going to have the engine, and then it's going to have the project. And then it's going to have the first important, important parameter, which is editor test, which is needed. And then we're going to tell it what commands to run. So so this is actually quite a long string here. So let's just take a look at what this is. So we say editor test, and then we say execute commands. We say we want to set the automation filter to only filter to the stress tests. Then we run list. So this lists all of the automation tests, and then we call automation run test. And then I'm going to call, I'm going to run the test project.blueprint.compile blueprint. So, so this is the way that this needs to be done. And the last thing that we're going to add here is the exit condition, which means that the test is going to exit, or is going to close the editor once the automation test queue is empty. And someone can probably explain a lot better what's actually happening, but this is basically what I've found by copy pasting this together. So then let's see if we run this. I'm gonna just create a string out of all of this, and then I'm gonna print it. So let's just start by doing Python compile blueprints. Yeah, so I forgot to save it. So here we can see that if I run this, so I have the Unreal Editor exe, the project file here, and then it's this just all of these kind of commands here, automation test, run automation tests, and then I'm going to import sub process to run it, and then I'm just going to call sub process run with the string itself. just get rid of this. And now that I run this, if everything goes well, it should start up the editor for me. It's actually starting up on the other screen here. And then we are going to see once this starts up, it should happen on the correct one. Here we go. So now it's actually running through all of the blueprints in the project. So this is editor content as well. And then afterwards, it closes the editor for me because I set the test exits on automation test queue empty. So to make this a little bit more useful, I'm going to add an absolute log location. So just for the sake of clarity, this is an absolute path here. And then I add the absolute path here, the log location into the command line. So now once I run this, we should see that there's the blueprint result.log, which is the file that we defined or passed in here. This is going to take in all of the so all of the results of this run are going to be in here. So we compile all of this. And then it closes off, so you can take a look here. This is going to be all of these, all of the information about the test. So if we, let's see if we can search for error. Here we can see this is our the error code that we had earlier. New variable declared in my blueprint actor as invalid type structure. So doing some simple parsing on this file is going to let us kind of figure out what went wrong. So by doing this, we've actually compiled our blueprints using the command line. So the last thing that I want to show is the stuff that I'm playing around with, which is using all of the stuff, especially the command line stuff, to hook it up to the Bazel build system to do some clever things. So let's take a look at that. So the last step that I want to show is doing this with Bazel. Bazel is a build system that I've been kind of exploring for game development, developed by Google, and you can do some pretty cool things with it. So I'm going to set up this compile blueprints kind of scenario app using Bazel. So the first thing that we need to do in our project here is we need to make a workspace file. And for the sake of this demo, I'm going to just copy in, well, I'm not going to just make it, called .bazeliskrc. So this is a config file for Bazel, just to tell it which version to use. So I'm just going to say use Bazel version last release candidate, and this is basically going to allow me. This means that I have a command line tool installed on my computer called Bazelisk. So if I run that, it's going to give me, it's going to download the latest version of Bazel for me, so I don't have to do it manually. So we have our workspace here, and we have our kind of environment set up. So let's take a look at adding some code to this. First thing that we're going to do is we are going to make the, first thing I'll just add the rule, the actual rule, the Bazel rules themselves. So I'm not going to go into super a lot of details on how this works. I barely understand this myself, but I just want to walk through the rule here that's called compile blueprint implementation. So basically what this does, this is a Bazel rule that takes a blueprint and outputs a text file. And what we're doing, we're basically just assembling the same kind of command line that we did earlier, and then we're defining an action inside of Bazel, which means an action that's going to be run, and then we are running this action, and then we're using Bazel to configure a couple of inputs, which means that it's going to understand, and this is the cool thing about it, it's going to understand which one, if they're supposed to run this again or not. So let me just show you how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a build file here, and this build file is going to contain our rules. So in the build file, I'm going to load my rules here. I have two rules: compile blueprint and run commandlet. And these files, these rules, build rules, actually exist inside of the in this file here. You can take a look. This is the, if we go to the bottom here, compile blueprints. This is the rule and the implementation we just looked at earlier. And then we have a run commandlet one. Run commandlet one is the generic one. Okay, so then I'm going to say, I'm going to do a new rule. I'm going to call it compile blueprint. give it a name, and I'm going to call it compile. Let's take a look at what our blueprint is called. Go into content, and I'm just going to copy this here and say I'm going to call this compile this blueprint. Then what we need to do is we need to give this two parameters here. It's going to copy paste them in. It's going to be the engine executable, and then it's going to have the project file. So the project file is a path inside of the workspace. You can see that this is the path to the workspace, and this is a colon saying that this is a file in the root of this package here. It's defined by the build file. The engine is an external package though. So before we finish this, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go into our workspace file, and I'm going to define a new local repository. It's going to be named Unreal Engine. It's using a build file here that's called Unreal Engine.build, which tells it, so basically tells the build environment what files are available outside of this kind of build area, and then it's an absolute path to the actual repo. And normally, like when I'm doing local repositories, these are usually relative paths, but for this demo, I'm using absolute paths. So let's make this file here then. And didn't mean to make a folder. I'm going to make a new file, UE5 engine.build. And the only thing that I need to do inside of that is I need to tell it that this package here is going to export the Unreal Editor -cmd.exe, which allows me to use this this file out of the other repository. Cool. So so now we have the @ symbol means that this is the package that's defined in the workspace file called Unreal Engine, and then I'm using the kind of the Unreal Engine, Unreal Editor CMD here, which we exported earlier. So the next thing that we can do here is we can say the blueprint that we're going to use. And we are going to tell it that this is a blueprint within this root package here inside of the content folder. And we already, let's take a look at here. Let's take this. Let's go back here. .uasset. And then I am going to, and this is supposed to be blueprint actually. And then there is this one more thing that I need to do here, and this is giving it a unique identifier. This is basically something that I added to my rule because in some cases the blueprints have the same name, so yeah, we don't really have to use it right now. Yeah, just keep it the same name, and then I'm gonna close the brackets here. I think these are called brackets. So now we have everything that we need to run this. So here in the shell, I'm gonna say basilisk build, and this is semicolon, not semicolon, colon, // colon, and then it's just going to be the name here. And let's see what happens. So what you can see here is that it's running an action, and the action is called bp myblueprint.txt. So effectively what we're doing is we're running the same command that we did before. And if we check out our output here, we can see that if I go into the outputs here under binaries, you can see that it generated the command that I ran, and it kind of gave me the output itself. This is the same as we saw before. But the cool thing here is if I run this again, Bazel detects that nothing has changed in the input files. I mean, the blueprint here has not changed, so there's no need for it to run it again. So I can go ahead and just copy this, and I'm going to get the other blueprint, which was the my good blueprint, and I'm going to call this compile my good blueprint, same engine executable, same project file, and we change these here. And now I am going to run the build on the other one. So this is kind of cool. So right now it's compiling the other one, taking a couple of seconds in doing that. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So now I can so now I've basically defined two actions here called compile blueprints. And compile blueprint, and it takes in two of the blueprints. And this is kind of where I'm at with this. I feed in the blueprint itself. So if I run this again now, I mean, let's just clear this and let's run just all. I'm going to run all of the commands, which are these two. So it's going to tell me here, found two targets, and nothing has changed. So I'm not going to do anything. But if I go in and I open the project here, let's wait for this to open up. So the idea, like the overall idea with this is this allows me to start up and compile a single blueprint in isolation. So if I go in here and I change, for example, my good blueprint, let's just add a print statement into it. And then I save it here. And then I close this down. It's going to run. I'm going to build all. It says found two targets. It's going to recompile my good blueprint because it detects the change in the good blueprint itself. So I'm going to let this finish. And then I'm going to show you another cool thing. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to run this one more time. And for my own kind of production projects, I am basically going in and I'm generating a line like this, compiled blueprint for each and every one of the blueprints in my project. And if I just go ahead and open this up, the broken one, I could just fix it, save it, and we go ahead into this one and we save and compile them. Close them down. The cool thing here is if I run this now, it's going to run both of my action in parallel. Yeah, so you're not seeing them actually being started up, but they are running two separate instances of Unreal Engine. We can take a look into the native rules here, and you can see that I'm running unattended with no splash actually twice, no pause, and no RHI. So it only took 12 seconds to load up this project and compile the blueprints and then output these reports here. And then the next step would be to feed these reports in, and you can see here that it's running a test started, and then yeah, so then we get a beginning the compile test, and then yeah, everything is fine. So yeah, this was basically the what I'm trying to do, kind of the awesome way, or the kind of the cool way for doing compiling blueprints with Bazel. So I hope this was useful. And if you have any comments or questions or anything, just feel free to let me know. I love interacting with everyone who's interested. So yeah, thank you.